Welcome to our new multimedia global tea hut. We're here in the Gong Fu room to talk about this month's tea, Old Man Dong Ding. Now, if any of you have ever visited our center, you know that this is one of our all-time favorite teas. This is going to be an exciting month in Global Tea Hut. This tea of the month is a very, very special tea from a place called Dong Ding. We call it Old Man Dong Ding. Now, there are two explanations for the name Dong Ding. It's obviously a place in Taiwan. It means literally frozen summit. Now, there's another alternative explanation for where the name of this tea and this place come from. In the Taiwanese dialect, Dong Ding means to flex your calves. And so a lot of the locals around there, they say that the name of the place and the tea comes from the fact that originally the tea there was growing on cliff sides and you had to really hike and flex your muscles to get up there to get to the tea to do your farm work. Teas there, like most oolongs in Taiwan, were brought from Fujian province. This varietal is 青青, which means tender heart or gentle heart. It was brought originally from Wuyi and has and thrived in Taiwan. If you read our previous issues on the tea varietals of Taiwan, both the three daughters of tea, which are originally from Taiwan, and the varietals that were brought from Wuyi, you know that the one that really thrived in Taiwan was 青青. Now, in those days, the more famous better varietals in Wuyi were much more heavily protected, so it was very difficult to bring cuttings from Wuyi to Taiwan to plant them because the farmers in Wuyi wouldn't allow that. Some of the original bushes that those farmers brought from Wuyi actually still thrive in Dong Ding. They're still there, and farmers still go and pray and worship to them every year, often before harvest. This tea is very, very special. It isn't a tea that actually we ever thought that we would be able to get in enough quantity to send out in Global Tea Hut. But this month, amazingly, we were, because of the generosity of Master Tsai, who you're going to meet in the magazine and in a video as well this month. Old Man Dong Ding is a very special Taiwanese oolong with a great story. Master Tsai was traveling to Lugu often, and he was buying tea from this organic farm owned by this family named Su. And he would drink tea with the old retired grandfather, the father of the farmer himself, quite often each year as he would go repeatedly to see the organic farm and see how the tea was made. And he noticed that the tea that the old man was drinking was very different than the tea that he was buying. And after they established some rapport together, he asked him about why the tea that he would serve him when they drank tea together, the old man, was different than the tea that his son was making and that Master Tsai was buying and taking back to Taipei. And the old man said, well, my son does make what is often in the market today called traditionally processed oolong, but it's not quite traditional enough for me. So I produce a little bit of this kind of tea because this is what I would like to drink in my retirement. And so he was basically making little batches of this tea each year to enjoy and kind of retire in style. And then as their rapport increased even more, Master Tsai asked him if it would be okay if he would make some of that tea for him. And he made a little bit, and the next year more, and the next year more. And pretty soon, that was all the tea that Master Tsai was commissioning from that farm, was that traditional processed oolong. So we should talk a little bit about what traditional versus modern processing is in regards to oolong tea. And then that will help us understand a lot about what makes this particular Old Man Dong Ding so very, very special. Oolong tea, of course, is semi-oxidized. And the range of oxidation traditionally was much more narrow than it is now. Now, when we talk about oolong tea, the range of oxidation is huge. Everything from very little oxidation in things like green baozhong tea and pinling in the north of Taiwan, all the way to Eastern Beauty, Dongfang Meiren, and it's very high oxidation, right? So traditionally, though, when oolong tea began around 300 years ago, for the first few hundred years, the level of oxidation was much more narrow. So traditional oolong has a heavier oxidation and a stronger roast. Now, in the 1970s and 80s, Taiwan went through a huge economic spurt, and all kinds of new culture and markets developed, including the tea market. And as more and more people became interested in tea and there became a greater demand for tea, Small Aboriginal farms in places like Lugu, where Dongting comes from, were bought up by big plantations that were designed to produce larger and larger quantities of tea to meet the growing demand. So now you have huge plantations that can produce very large quantities of tea. The thing is, though, that the skill needed to process oolong tea traditionally with heavier oxidation and higher roast is very, very complicated and very, very deep. At least half of the quality of any oolong tea is in the tea trees, and at least half in the skill, the gongfu of the one who made the tea, who withered it, who dried it, and who roasted it. So this was a big problem as the market shifted towards this huge mainstream need for oolong tea. As more and more people started drinking oolong tea, these traditional processing methods really are no longer applicable because that tea can't be mass produced and it requires a lot of skill to produce. And so the oolong industry in Taiwan started shifting to lighter oxidation and lighter roast, greener and greener and greener oolongs. The other issue with traditionally processed oolongs is that they also require skill to brew. They're not so easy to brew. They're a little bit more finicky. You need some gongfu, which means mastery and skill. You need some skill to prepare them properly. And so as tea started booming and the tea market started booming, that a tea that requires a lot of skill and can't be mass produced won't suit a large mainstream market that needs large quantities of tea that's easy to prepare. So as the market shifted in Taiwan and moved more towards lighter, greener, more fragrant oolongs, there also became a trend to move towards higher and higher and higher altitudes. And that meant that the tea from Lugu, from Dongting, which is actually relatively low altitude, started to lose its market. It was trumped by these higher and higher teas, by teas from Yusan or Lisan or Alisan. And people in Dongting started turning to mass-produced, kind of more chemical-laden, conventional farming to make a living. So they went from quality to quantity. Recently, they've started traditionally processing their teas again with higher oxidation, higher roast to carve out a niche. And that popularity has spread, and now traditional processing is spreading to other areas in Taiwan, which is a good thing, because in general, tea lovers migrate from lighter, fragrant teas in the beginning to deeper, more full-bodied teas later on. These more traditionally processed oolongs are more gentle on the system. They're not so harsh or astringent. They're better for the digestion. They also have more body and depth. There's more there. There's more in the aroma. There's more in the flavor. And there's more definitely in the qi and the meditative experience as a whole. So that if you're drinking the tea with the whole body, there's definitely more of an experience there, which we hope you're able to see as you try this month's tea. Here are a couple tips for enjoying this month's tea. Of course, we recommend drinking all of Global Tea Hut teas in quiet, taking the time to appreciate them, to slow down, to make tea a more important part of your day, and that will bring more rewards than just a deeper enjoyment of the tea. With oolong tea, we want to take smaller sips. This is why traditional gongfu cups were actually very, very small. Try sipping the tea, try putting as little tea liquor in your mouth as possible. Try to just take as small of a sip as you can. Teeny sips. The smaller the sip, the better. Now with pu'er or liubao or teas like that, the bigger the gulp, the better. And that's because those teas enter the subtle body through the stomach and through the chest, whereas oolong tea enters the subtle body up through the nasal cavity, this way, up through the head. So the smaller sip you take, the more the tea will go up through the boundaries of the mouth and enter the subtle body and into the qi. You'll find that the tea is much more rewarding when you try taking little sips. And there's nothing I would rather do or wish for all of you than an afternoon free of all busyness, free of all schedule, where you can set the clock down and set all you have to do down and sit and enjoy an awesome oolong tea like this and while the entire afternoon away with cup after cup of such bliss. We'd like to thank all of you for your support, and we hope that you have really enjoyed drinking and sharing this month's amazing Old Man Dongting Oolong Tea.